And this episode is brought to you by Dye Real Estate and Land Company. They are the real estate agents based in Northwest Ohio that are the go-to company for people who enjoy the rural lifestyle and are looking to buy and sell some property. The whole team is amazing. I've used them in the past. I'm partial to Jaylene myself for obvious reasons, but they're all there for you whenever you need them. If you're in the market, just drop them a line at info@dyerealestate.com. That's info@dyerealestate.com. And don't forget to tell them Support Your Local Podcast sent you.
He stuck his finger in the end of your what?
Howdy, everyone. Pull up a chair, kick up your boots, and get a sip on a nice cold
Sarsaparilla.
What?
Well, I would write it down, but I don't figure you could read it. Sody pop.
It's Support Your Local Podcast, the show where we go over the 1969 Western comedy classic Support Your Local Sheriff, one chapter at a time. I'm your host, Robert Smith, coming to you from beautiful Tombstone. Yes, that one. We join our movie today in Chapter 14, Sheriff's Bluff. But before we do that, I want to just take a few moments and kind of give you a lay of the land in regards to the time frame that not just the movie is set in, but the time frame that the movie came out in a segment that I like to call It Came in 69.
That gun had gone off, it had blown right up in the face.
Now, it wouldn't have done my finger a hell of a lot of good either, would it?
In 1869, March 21st, legendary showman Florin Siegfried Jr., impresario behind what became known as the Siegfried Follies, was born. Thomas Edison patents the electric vote recorder. James Butler Wild Bill Hickok is elected sheriff of Ellis County, Kansas. In July, Hickok was back in Hays and was elected sheriff and city marshal of Ellis County in a special election. On December 10th, John Campbell, governor of the Wyoming Territory, approved the first law in U.S. history explicitly granting women the right to vote. And this has been It Came in 69.
Wow!
So we start our chapter, Sheriff's Bluff, much like last time. This time the riders heading to town are a bit closer up, and we see that Paul Danby is leading the charge. There is orchestral music with horns that sound a bit like a Star Wars battle sequence, which I found interesting. But this cuts to a wide shot of down the town street, and noticeably it is completely empty of people. The sheriff is walking down the middle of the road towards the camera, and we hear the familiar guitar strums from the gunfight scenes earlier. What, like I said, sounded like the cutthroat sound from Rio Bravo. The sheriff is carrying 2 rifles and boxes of shells. He meets Prudy, who he hands a rifle to and directs her to go to the courthouse. And I wonder why he didn't give her the gun while they were back in the office. They were all right there. I know that he told Jake to grab Joe, and there was something going on that they had planned out with that. So maybe he needed his hands to accommodate that. But as docile as Joe has been, I don't foresee that being an issue. But I just found it interesting that he's just now giving her the rifle. So was he still trying to decide on allowing Prudy to partake in whatever's about to go down? Whatever it was, obviously he's come to terms with it and is at least letting her be armed. Jake is hiding behind a pile of wood on the other side of the street, and he confirms with the sheriff that he knows what to do, and that is, as he mumbles under his breath, stay out of the line of fire, so basically not get shot. As Prudy enters the courthouse, and wait. As I'm reading that note, they have a courthouse, but never up until that point had any plans of having a judge? Question mark? Anyway, the mayor and the town councilmen are seen passing by, and they quickly scurry. And when the sheriff tries to get their attention to speak to them, they're unable to take a second to talk to the sheriff because they need to head to a emergency town council meeting. And spoilers, if you listen to the last episode, you know where that may be. But just keep that in mind that when the town council is not busy meeting at the town hall, there is a secondary location. We'll have to see where that may be. We cut back to the orchestra, and the riders are getting closer and closer, and there's a quick cut, and the guitar is playing again, and the riders have reached the town. They ride in, and they turn to go up the street with Chekhov's cannon in the foreground. Remember, Chekhov's gun. There is a great wide shot of them riding up the street, and the group of 13, and yes, there's 13 horses and riders side by side, taking up the entirety of the street. So 13 horses. This is further proof that chapters ago, that street fight was just the two of them wanting to punch each other. They could have easily gotten both of those carriages through side by side. But alas, remember, as you count them, there are 13 of those people there. Paul gives Dick Peabody, the dark-haired brother, Danby, his eating teeth, not wanting them to be shot up. And now Walter Brennan is shown having teeth in his mouth when he's talking about this. So presumably those are also dentures. And I'm curious, do people or did people have two sets of dentures back then? One just for eating and then one just for show? Curious question. Sometime I'll probably have to ask somebody. But yeah, if you know, let me know. Hit me up on the social medias. Let me know what the answer to that is. But the son puts them in his breast pocket for safekeeping. And to learn a little bit more about Paul Danby and his teeth, now is a great time to take a moment and take a little bit of a deeper dive into what is easily Western royalty in regards to the movies. One Mr. Walter Brennan in a segment that I like to call Remember the Name.
That's about all I'm going to do the rest of my life is go around remembering your name.
Welcome back to Remember the Name, the segment of our show where we take a deeper dive into looking at some of the cast, some of the crew that made Support Your Local Sheriff. Today, I'm super excited that we get to really get into one of my favorite actors and definitely somebody that is Western royalty, and that is Mr. Walter Brennan. Born in July of 1894. I'm pretty sure he's the only one that we're going to review that saw the 1800s. He was born close to when the Westerns that he starred in were actually happening in real life. Left us in September of 1974, so right around 80 years old. A very famous actor in regards to Westerns and the like. The man has 3 Academy Award wins. In 1936 for Come and Get It, 1938 Kentucky, and in 1940 for The Westerner. So in the span of 4 years, roughly, he has 3 Academy Award wins for Best Supporting Actor. He is actually one of only 3 males that have 3 Academy Awards and is the only male and or female to win 3 Supporting Actor or Actress Academy Awards. He was nominated for a 4th for his role in Sergeant York in 1941. So from 1936 to 1941, red hot on fire. So Mr. Brennan was in France during World War One. So a majority of our people that we were looking at in this day and age of the movie were serving in World War II. Mr. Brennan actually served in World War One. During that campaign, he was injured with mustard gas, and it impacted his vocal cords, and that's what gave him that famous voice, that kind of sound to his voice that he's known for in all of his characters. Around 1932, when he was primarily working as a stunt person, a bit actor, an extra, he was doing a fight scene and one of the other extras kicked him in the face and he lost his teeth. And so now he's wearing dentures. And what that meant was he would be able to, 1932 when this happened, he's what, 38-ish years old. He could take his teeth out, his dentures out, and he could automatically look 40 years older. So he could do a wide range of characters from 30 to 70, gave him that versatility as a character actor. In 1959, he stars in where I definitely know him from, where I predominantly know him from, and that's the John Wayne, Dean Martin classic Rio Bravo. He played Stumpy, the man that was in charge of tending to the jail and watching the prisoners while John Wayne and Dean Martin go battle the bad guys. So I remember Stumpy from a very early age. Rio Bravo was one of the movies, much like this one, Support Your Local Sheriff, that Dad would watch religiously whenever it came on TBS. So Saturdays, we'd get home from bowling league. We'd have a couple hours and to have lunch, and then we'd sit down and we'd watch professional bowling on TV on ABC. And then there was a couple hours until wrestling would come on TBS at 6:05. And usually, if it wasn't a Atlanta Braves game, what happened before the 6:05 wrestling show was that they would show a Western on TBS. Obviously, Turner was definitely a huge John Wayne and Western fan, and Rio Bravo was one of those ones that you would routinely see on there. So I got to see Stumpy. I fell in love with that character. I love that movie dearly. But that's where I know Walter Brennan from. And then since then have discovered him in so many different movies. I mean, obviously the man had a long and lengthy career, especially in the Western genre. So from 1957 to 1963, he was on The Real McCoys, a TV show where a lot of people would know him from. And then 1962, he was in How the West Was Won. That same year, and this was the fun fact that I got to dig out from doing his research on him. And in 1962, he's 67 years old, and he has become the oldest to ever have a top 5 Billboard hit. Yes, a singer. Dad had always said that he had Walter Brennan records that he would listen to and tapes in his car. I don't remember ever hearing any of them, but he always talked about whenever we'd watch Rio Bravo, specifically the scene where they're doing the song in the jailhouse with Dean Martin, and when they're in the jailhouse doing the song with Dean Martin and Ricky Nelson. But to see that he actually was a hit singer was pretty cool. It's kind of like hearing about Jim Nabors from the Andy Griffith Show. But yeah, Mr. Walter Brennan, definitely Western royalty. You turn on any Western over the past 70 years, and there's a fairly good chance that he was a part of it. So I definitely enjoyed doing this deep dive and taking a look at the career of Mr. Walter Brennan, Stumpy, Paul Danby, whatever he is to you. He is, again, Western royalty. But this has been Remember the Name.
You tell him I remember his name.
And we're back. They all dismount, and Paul tells the two brothers to go into the sheriff's office and get Joe. They enter, guns drawn, but they find it empty. The sheriff appears on the other side of the street and announces they were all under arrest. Again, something that he could have done with Paul earlier, but whatever. He's obviously answered with gunfire from everyone, and he goes diving behind a wagon. Jake gives him a little bit of cover fire, and the group now knows that they have both sides of the street to contend with, so they scatter behind buildings and barrels, and our gunfight is officially on. It's time. Prudy is in on the fight, and we see cuts between all the different groups firing at one another. Jason is firing away with his rifle, and he must not practice as much with it as he does with his handgun, because for as accurate as he was earlier with a pistol, he joins everyone else at the stormtrooper level of rifle shots. And whoop, whoop, whoop. We have our first Western trope alert. people unnecessarily getting themselves killed in westerns. So two of the unnamed men who were safely behind barrels with others decide to push the barrels away and start charging across the street, and they are immediately shot down by Prudy. And I dare you to name a Western, and I guarantee you at some point, someone will blindly remove themselves from perfectly good cover right in the middle of gunfire to be killed. So many Westerns, I can't even name them all. But there's always somebody that has to go blindly charging into the middle of gunfire. Jason seems mortified at this Prudy killing these two men because he's missing on purpose, perhaps. It gives me a little bit different light as to him missing it with his shots. But anyways, he somehow manages to run completely down the street, unobstructed amongst all the gunfire, to burst into the courthouse and chastise Prudy for killing those two men. It's kind of like an anti-Western trope alert is, for as many people that barge through in the middle of gunfire to be killed, it seems like there's always a shot where the hero does this mad 30-yard dash that should get him looking like Swiss cheese, but somehow gets through unscathed. Jason does so right here. Jason is responsible for at least 3 deaths so far in gunfights, but his lady's not allowed to kill people, I suppose. Is this just a continuation of the nagging of Prudy? We'll see. But Jason wants to leave the courthouse, but he realizes he probably was lucky getting in there untouched. So he then does what I put as maybe the second best joke of the movie, and one that's in the trailer. I wish they didn't spoil it in the trailer, but, spoiler alert, they've been ruining movies with trailers for at least going on 60 years. He hollers out to the crowd to hold their fire, and he begins to walk out into the street. He continues to tell them to hold as he safely crosses, and then lets them shoot again as he dives behind the wood with Jake. And again, straight out of a Looney Tunes. You would think of seeing something like this later in Blazing Saddles, but this movie with the comedy in there, it's predominantly in the dialogue with a setting and actions rooted in reality. So it's not as Looney Tunes as a Blazing Saddles, but definitely something that you would expect to see then. And granted, Blazing Saddles came after this, so just a thought. Jason asks Jake to go get Joe, and we see him notice Chekhov's cannon, finally. The wheels you can see are starting to turn in his head. But meanwhile, if you listen in the background, you can tell that the sound guy is just pressing a gunshot button repeatedly, as the shots are constant without a gap or a rhythm between them. It's like when a kid has a toy and they're just pressing the button nonstop to the level of annoyance. We see Prudy taking shots, including one that hits the Danby brother, Dick Peabody, right in Paul's teeth. And Paul is more concerned that he will no longer be able to nom down on some grub than that it saved the life of his son, just to show where they stand in the rank of Paul's loves. Somehow, of the now 11 Danby gang, all of them must have been looking at Prudy, because down the street, no one has noticed that Jake and Jason somehow have taken Joe downstairs from the building, walked him down the street, and handcuffed him to the front of the cannon. Told you, if you show a cannon in the first act, you have to fire it in the third. Proof. This brings the gunfire to an abrupt end, and the crowd comes out of the cover and starts heading down the street. We see the 2 dead bodies still lying in the road, but in the close-up shot of them coming out, you see 12 people still fighting. When it comes to a wide shot of all of them lined up across the road, there's now 13. So now either this is bad continuity, which is funny because you still see the body line in the road, so you'd think they'd catch that, or people from the town actually joined the Danbys. Perhaps that third gunfighter came back from his fear of rocks? Question mark? Maybe 2 of the people that got thrown off their horses thought, man, we really don't like that sheriff. Paul calls the sheriff's bluff of lighting the cannon, despite Joe's insistence that he really does mean it. And after contemplation, Paul finally throws down his gun, as does the others. The sheriff and Jake uncuff Joe, and Jake takes the crowd away to the prison. We've seen prior that there are only two small cells in the jail. I don't think we ever see a second bed in Joe's cell, but we do see another ring on the wall down from the one next to Joe. So maybe there's a second bed on the other wall. Still, that's two cells with four beds total for 14 people. It's gonna get a bit cramped, but at least now they have bars. Prudy wonders if the sheriff would have really blown Joe up with the cannon, and he demonstrates that it wasn't loaded by lighting the fake fuse he put in it with his cigar. And as the group walks away, the cannon goes off, and we hear the cannonball crash into Madame Orr's house. Apparently, Madame Orr keeps barrels of gunpowder along her front walls because the cannonball enters on the side of the window and the entire front of the building explodes. Orr's or employees, or maybe independent contractors, come racing out, and so does the city council and the mayor in their union suits. So apparently the emergency meeting of the council has just been interrupted, but we do know where the secondary location for such meetings takes place. The mayor vows to Madame Orr that he'll find out who's responsible for this. And fun little note that I found in my research, the bordello is named Madame Orr's house. It's an interesting play on words, obviously, with the joke of whore and Orr. But apparently it's to be a subtle dig at William Orr of Warner Brothers. He was an executive, and he produced James Garner's TV series Maverick. And Garner did not have a very good relationship with him because of conflicts that they had over unfair contracts. So it's thought that they named the House of Ill Repute after him as a subtle dig. So nice little Easter egg there. Paul Danby chastises the sheriff for blowing up the business and those poor unfortunate girls. And the sheriff denies meaning to do that and states that the girls of Madame Orr's are some of his best friends. And we hear that, and we end with Prudy reacting to that with, well, he's a man, look. And again, jokes that were just commonplace back then that would not get past muster, so to speak, nowadays in today's movies. Just yeah, we'll just leave it at that. But that concludes our chapter. We will be back next week with chapter 15, Popular Man. We are finishing up. We are near the finish line. Until then, if you haven't already, please like and follow us on our social media. We are at Support Your Local Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. You can get a hold of me at suppyourlocalpodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on all of your favorite podcatchers. Easiest way to find us is at supportyourlocalpodcast.com. But until next week, my friends, I love you all. Thank you for listening. I thank you for your time. And always support your local podcast.
He stuck his finger in the end of your what?
Hello, I'm Robert T. Smith, host of Support Your Local Podcast. I want to take a moment to remind you to hit that fast forward button. That is, unless you want to hear about something good being done. Anyone who knows me knows that I love bowling. In 2016, I founded the Smith Family Bowling Scholarship Foundation, intended to honor my father's hard work and dedication to community service and award scholarships to youth bowlers throughout the nation. To date, we've awarded well over $15,000 in scholarships. If you are a bowler, know a bowler, have ever seen a bowler, or heard about anyone who has ever seen a video of a bowler, I'd love for you to help promote the SFBSF and its mission. Please go to sfbsf.com and see what we're all about. While you're there, please consider hitting that donate button and helping us make a brighter future for our youth. Again, that's sfbsf.com. Thank you for your time.